Hi, I'm Chris Jacobs, one of the product development engineers here at Replacement Parts Industries. You may have recently seen an article on MedWrench's Ask the Expert about preventative maintenance tips for the Medivator units. Today, I'd like to highlight a few of those tips from the article. When getting prepared for a PM on a DSD-201 or an Edge, there are a few things you might want to look at. First off is getting familiar with the unit itself, whether you have to go through a service manual or even attending an actual class through Medivators. The next part is grabbing your PM kit. Ensure that everything is inside the PM kit that is needed to perform maintenance on either machine. Next, you're going to want to check with the staff that actually runs the machine. Most of the time there are 5 filters that need regular replacement. Ensure that those have been replaced recently. And the very last part is of course any specialized tools you may want to help you with the job. For instance, this RXT004 collet release wrench can help perform some of the maintenance on the machine. As far as the time that it takes to perform a preventative maintenance on either a DSD-201 or an Edge, for beginners you may want to block off a 6-hour window. For those of you a little more experienced, 3 to 4 hours should be sufficient. Most of the time is going to be taken up from taking components out of the machine rather than actually replacing the PM parts themselves. One of the important first steps in doing the PM is make sure to locate and shut off the main water inlet valve just after the pre-filters. Another thing to note while you're here is the difference between the two gauges. If it's more than 10 psi, you need to replace the filters. Next, you'll need to do a flush on the unit. The important part here is to make sure you drain the 0.2 micron filter housing shown here. The very last thing, of course, is unplugging the unit. Before starting your PM, one of the things you're going to want to make sure that you do is to relieve air from the air tank, this large air tank in the back of your machine. How you do that is you go around to the side of the unit here to this little key ring and you pull on it after you've removed power from the unit. I'm asked a lot, do you have to remove the 3/4 inch drain valve assembly to perform the preventative maintenance? No, not technically. However, replacing the valve repair kits on here, specifically valve number 9, it's much easier if you remove this whole valve assembly and replace the kits one by one. One of the longest parts of the PM is going into each one of these Fabco valves and replacing the air valve diaphragm that's on the bottom. One of the things that happens when you do this is these screws that you're removing oftentimes are connected to these little inserts, and if these are tightened down too much, they'll pull the insert out. So it is important that when you go to replace these seals that you do not tighten these screws down too much, because once those inserts are removed, the block needs a replacement. An easy way to remove the diaphragm seals from these Fabco valves is to use a low profile wrench. The RXT003 makes for a perfect tool. It slides gently underneath the air valve diaphragm and locks onto the 2 edges that you actually have on the piston bottom, and then you can just simply take your Allen key set and unscrew the screw. One of the things I hear a lot is that my air valve diaphragms keep getting stuck. Now this can mean one of 2 things. First, the diaphragms themselves getting stuck to the valve body because the last person who did the maintenance didn't put a small amount of Loctite on the top of this screw. If you get too carried away with the Loctite, these screws will get stuck almost permanently and destroy your entire valve. So be careful to use a very, very small amount every time you do a PM. The next part implies the actual valve diaphragms themselves. As you can see, we have a cutaway of the valve. There are 3 O-rings inside this valve, one on the top piston, one on the driving piston, and one not shown here that actually seals the driving piston to the valve body. As these O-rings get older, they sometimes dry out. You may need to re-lubricate them, or if they're in too bad a shape, they may need to be replaced. One of the things that can get confusing while you're doing a PM, especially the one this long, is which direction the check valves go inside this main manifold. This submanifold block can be easily taken apart. Inside the main manifold you should see 3 check valves. Each check valve has one small O-ring on each side, one in the main manifold and one in your submanifold. Those need to be removed. You need to take your new O-ring, place one inside the main manifold, then grab your check valve, which you may not be able to see the knurled edges here, but if you look at this, you'll be able to see that the small knurls need to face into the manifold block. You'll place the knurled edge in, then take your second O-ring, place it inside the submanifold block, and then do the same for the other 2 check valves. Then simply take your submanifold block, place it back on your main manifold block, and seal them together. After completing your PM, one of the first things you're going to want to do is complete a waterline disinfection. After that, you may want to check on your drain times and also perform a leak test if available. If you're unsure about if your machine has a leak tester, here are a few examples used over the years by Medivators. First is essentially just a blood pressure cuff bulb used on the very first DSD-201s. Next one is an optional leak tester used on DSD-201, so yours may be present or it may not be. The final leak tester is something that is included automatically on the edge units, but may or may not be present on the DSD-201. So how can RPI help you with your Medivators PM? Well, RPI includes detailed step-by-step installation instructions for the full PM of the DSD-201 and the DSD Edge. Each instruction booklet includes detailed exploded views to help with disassembly and reassembly throughout the PM process. Plus, each instruction booklet includes full color photos to help identify important parts of the unit. RPI Medivator PM kits also include a low-profile wrench, the RXT003, to help with the disassembly of the Fabco valves. And lastly, RPI's Technical Assistance Center, available on our website or our mobile site. And you can also reach us by phone for free technical support. Again, my name is Chris Jacobs for RPI. Thank you for watching, and if you need any technical support, please feel free to call our technical support line.